Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Now, where was I before I was so rudely interrupted? Oh yes, the entire point of propaganda is not to inform you. It's to convince you of what someone else wants you to think. And the point of a shill is to be an example of blind, unquestioning belief in whatever their employer, or in the case of the bootlicks, the employer they wish they had, wants you to believe. A lot of people, most people in fact, don't think for themselves, so most people are easily influenced by someone who comes along and shows that they have convictions, and that they believe something very strongly. But there's a psychological loophole to that, the big lie. The bigger the lie, the more apt people are to believe it because they simply cannot process that anyone would express some wildly audacious idea unless there was something true about it. And because ridiculous ideas are basically impossible to analyze, they can only be dismissed, then people don't know how to handle it. A lot of them will start to buy into the lie because they have no frame of reference of how to process it. This is why shills are effective, with the gullible and the weak-minded or the easily led. And it's even worse when you have an established source of general information, or rather disinformation, like the white media. They provide a pre-existing basis for all the lies that the shills later come along to peddle. Established power has always had a huge Achilles heel, that they have to stay away from the people so that they cannot be easily confronted on their lies and deceit. As a result, the people easily recognize that these misleaders have nothing in common with them, and they reject them because of that, no matter what kind of feeble rhetoric they use to say otherwise. So since those in power have to keep the people that they're oppressing at arm's length, they're actually more reliant on a means to communicate with the people, but they need a messenger who's credible, someone who's not seen as part of established power, but who speaks on their behalf anyway, and presents themselves to the people as if they're one of us. This is where the shills come in, and in fact in the digital age, they can employ entire troll farms, whole armies of virtual shills, all saying the exact same line of crap. And since so many people have cocooned themselves online and don't have much contact with people outside of the internet, when they see a large number of comments saying this or that foolishness, they'll actually think that each of these anonymous unknown accounts is an actual person. See, this is the evil genius of white power flooding the zone with so many bots and shills who are multiple sock puppet accounts. They get lost in the shuffle because there's so many of them, and since these tech companies do nothing to stop the proliferation of these bots and shills, people stop rejecting the carpet bombing of lies because there's so much of it. It goes from background noise to being part of the landscape. Lies, created, pushed, and promoted by organized power, become part of the landscape. Janet Jackson is under fire right now for precisely this, for speaking her truth. And on cue, you got the usual bootlicks attacking her, and the person who seems to be trying to lead the charge in this case is D.L. Hughley. I'm convinced that the DL must stand for dumb and loudmouth. By the way, you remember when that clown had a so-called show on CNN? It was his pathetic attempt to be taken seriously. And it seems he's still hoping someone in the white media is going to give him a real job. Notice how as black people we always point out that we had better be skeptical of what we see from established power because we're not part of the establishment and it doesn't work in our interest. Now, these white media bootlicks like D.L. Hughley, they'll pretend to believe that. They'll pretend to say that kind of stuff when they're in front of us. And then there's some issue that comes along when it's time for us to put our foot down and start making demands. Then all of a sudden, they're telling us we can't question what established power says, especially if it comes from a so-called Negro puppet. D.L. Hughley is offended by Janet Jackson raising a simple point of fact about what she's heard. He doesn't refute what she says. Instead, he says she has a white woman's nose. Now, how is that supposed to persuade anyone to believe that Janet Jackson's totally in the wrong? How is that supposed to convince anyone of anything? Ever notice how the bootlicks get furious whenever black people challenge white power or white power's Negro puppets? They get insulting, condescending, abusive, threatening, like roly-poly. They start cursing and all the rest of it. They shuck and jive until black people begin speaking for ourselves. Then these guys start attacking us in ways they never attack Republicans. It shows you why white power has them on the payroll. Their job is to keep the rest of us in line. We're being told that as black people, Kamala Harris being elected president would be a great accomplishment for us. That this would somehow count as an achievement for black people. And Janet Jackson is merely asking the pig-simple common-sense question, is that true? Janet Jackson's being attacked for that. There are people trying to call her crazy. Well, that's typical, because when Michael Jackson began making power moves and buying the Beatles catalog and trying to get his hands on Elvis Presley's goods, when he began using his money not to shuck and jive but to acquire power, all of a sudden the white media began attacking him with lies, putting defamatory titles on him, like Wacko Jacko. And of course, all of a sudden there were all kinds of false accusations being made about him and children. But the real hell started when Michael Jackson fought back, and did so successfully. He began naming names, something nobody else had ever had the courage to do. That was when the decision was made he had to be destroyed. But as those of us who don't let the white media dictate our opinions to us or tell us what to believe, we understood Michael Jackson wasn't crazy at all and never had been. Say what you want about his surgeries. Most white women in Hollywood have more than he did, but they don't get demonized. Or his adopted children. When it came to business, Michael Jackson wasn't crazy at all. And that was the problem. So let them talk their trash about Janet. The people who are attacking her are these sorry Negroes who have to rely on white media to give them every crumb of their daily bread. These are the Negroes who make no demands of white power. And when you point out how demands have to be made, they tell you that we can't do that because it's too dangerous. That's the con. These Negro shills for the white media pretend to agree with us when we say we have to make demands. They'll even repeat some of our talking points in a feeble attempt to give themselves some legitimacy. But when it comes time to actually put our foot down and black people begin saying we're going to leverage our vote to get what we need, they start telling us we can't do that. They keep doing the same go along to get along garbage and telling us our demands are dangerous. That's a huge part of the treadmill they've had us on. Winning elections is not our goal. That's the goal of the Democrats. Our goal is getting what we're owed. I don't care who wins office. If the Republicans were willing to do what I tell them to do, then I would tell you to vote for them. But since they're not offering us anything, I'm not about to tell you to vote for the Republicans. So how does it become smart when you have Democrats who tell you to your face, I'm not going to do something that's only going to benefit black people? No! All the while, they smile, beam, and strut as they brag about all the things that they are doing for everybody else, things that don't benefit anyone except them. We don't gain anything by the Democrats winning office because they haven't done anything for us, and they're openly promising that they're not going to do anything for us. So why is anybody dreading the Democrats losing? Oh, it's because the Republicans are going to do things against us. Ain't that what D.L. Hughley and the others do? They say that the Republicans, they gonna do things to us. Haven't you know they doing things to us? All right, I'm having to repeat the same sermon that I preached 5 years ago. In order for that fear-mongering to make any sense, you would have to show me what the Republicans are going to do that the Democrats haven't been doing all along. D.L. Hughley and the rest of these shills say that if Trump retakes office, he's going to encourage the police to kill black people, and a Trump DOJ won't do anything about it. Well, I don't know how to break this to you, but the number of police murders has actually gone up under Biden and Harris. Did you know that? Police killings have risen every year of the Biden administration, and at the pace police are killing people, 2024 will be the highest year yet. So for those of you who are saying that Trump is the friend of killer cops, that is true. But not as good a friend as Biden's been to them and his Vice President Kamala Harris, who, by the way, has not said even boo about all of these police killings that have gone up year after year on her watch. You say that Donald Trump's going to hurt black people economically. Have you seen the condition we're in under Biden? And we haven't even gotten to mass migration. We're being economically strangled, drowned in illegal and racially hostile elements from abroad, and murdered by the police in the streets. And this is under Kamala Harris, not Trump. Biden wrote the '94 crime bill. He was so proud of it, he called it Biden's law. That is until it became a political liability to him. Now he pretends he doesn't know who wrote it or that he voted to have it passed into law. Can you tell me the Trump version of the '94 crime bill that got passed? I'll wait. Donald Trump took out an ad demanding that innocent black teenagers be put to death. Absolutely true that he did that. And then Biden passed a law immediately afterwards to make it possible to do that. And when Kamala Harris became a prosecutor, she started using those laws and the tough on black people social climate to go after as many black people as she could. We got the same cacophony of fear talk that we had 5 years ago with these fools telling you, you can't afford to let the Democrats lose because if you do, why, haven't you seen what Trump said? They want you to be angry and scared of Trump's words. But why is it that they're not telling you about Biden's actions? Trump's New York Times ad was racist as hell and a million other things. But the one thing that ad wasn't was legislation. Trump's little racist temper tantrum in the New York Times was not a law, but the '94 crime bill was. Donald Trump has never apologized for that racist ad that he took out, just like Joe Biden's never apologized for the '94 crime bill either, and Kamala Harris has never apologized for weaponizing every prosecutorial office she's ever held to go after black people. It seems all of them are on the exact same page when it comes to black folks. That is, if you actually look at what they do, if you actually believe your lying eyes and your lying ears and stop listening to the paid liars like these bootlicks. And when it comes to cash reparations or anti-black crime bill, I would like for you to tell me the difference between Trump and Kamala Harris on any of those things. All of them are on the exact same page. They're not even going to discuss it. It seems to me the similarities between Trump and Kamala Harris far outweigh any alleged differences. And yet we have these comfortable bootlicks like D.L. Hughley who tell us that there is some difference, they just can't tell us what it is. All they can do is point to Trump's words. But D.L. Hughley's not bothered by Kamala's actions. Apparently he's completely oblivious to how she cackled and laughed like a witch when talking about prosecuting black mothers for truancy. And now that heifer boldly tells us she's not going to do anything for us. D.L. Hughley's not bothered by that at all. And apparently he seems to think that her telling us what she's not going to do for us is somehow different than Trump telling us what he's not going to do for us. Now, if anyone wants to smear Janet Jackson as being crazy somehow simply because she's asking questions, then please tell me, how is it sane to say vote for a woman who spent her entire adult life attacking black people, covering for police killings of black people, telling us she's not going to do anything for black people, and then saying vote for her because she's going to protect black people and do things for us? How does that make any sense? Janet Jackson is in the real world. D.L. Hughley is in his dream world. Sadly, though, he's not alone. We have people who try to scare us with the prospect of some terrible fate that's just around the corner, when the reality is there's nothing the orange man's going to do to us that both parties haven't been doing all along. Now, the Republicans have made it very clear that they don't want black votes. The Democrats, on the other hand, cannot win office without those black votes. So doesn't it make sense, if you're trying to be logical, to decide to put pressure on the Democrats and let them know if you want to have office, you have to do what we, the base of the party, say? That's common sense. And yet you got so many black people who will bend over backwards and twist themselves into knots, just pretzel themselves with all of these lies, telling themselves, no, we can't do it. It's too dangerous. All this stuff going to happen. It's too dangerous. When the truth of the matter is everything that they claim to be so scared of that's going to happen has been happening all along. But this is how desensitized black people have become to their own suffering. And if you decided that you're not going to pay attention to your suffering, how are you going to get the suffering to stop? Some years ago, YouTube had something called the ad apocalypse, which meant that a lot of people found their AdSense money drying up because advertisers were trying to streamline their operations under the guise of not putting money onto any offensive content. Well, the Shills began to suffer a similar phenomenon after Obama left office. The Negro whisperers got shown the door. As for the white right, there were some Negroes who got some quick cash from cheerleading for Trump, but the white right never wanted them around, so they got sidelined and many of them shown the door. Whatever happened to Diamond and Silk? Whatever happened to Omarosa? I'll let you guess on that one. Candace Owens is the latest tool to get the treatment. Make no mistake, if her white conservative handlers had offered her more money, Candace Owens would have taken back every word that she had said. And she's not alone. Hell, if Fox News offered D.L. Hughley a job, offered him a show, I bet you he'd soften his rhetoric towards them too. But this is the entire point, putting blinders over people's eyes, but they can only do it if you let them. Kamala Harris shows everyone why she stayed in hiding and doesn't get in front of the cameras. This woman is such a fraud, such a liar. All she knows how to do is get money from rich men. And when it comes to black people, she shows us that she has no connection to us. But with bought and paid for sellouts and suck-ups like these Democrat pundits and these pathetic black celebrities who will jump in front of the camera for any reason because they're desperate for publicity, she figures she can use them as her crash dummies. But black people are watching this time. That's the difference between this election and the past ones. We're getting closer and closer to that critical mass of black people who are actually paying attention from one election cycle to the next. We're not allowing stuff to just fall down the memory hole anymore. That's what they're scared of. They've always been able to rely on black people getting punched in the face and then conveniently forgetting about it. We're going to just move on. This time's like, nah, you hit me, and that being the case, I'm going to hit back, only harder. So as the gravity of the situation sinks in, the people who are so bullish on President Kamala are sounding a lot more hesitant these days. But they're not alone. It's an election year, so you know what that means. It's shill season. As we continue hammering the point that Kamala Harris isn't offering black people anything, these online shills, who are usually DNC campaign staffers and even volunteers, all desperately dreaming of the day they'll actually get a job working for some Democrat politician, they're attacking us for daring to demand anything. Because our demands actually threaten the system of white supremacy that they depend on to feed them. That's how these shills operate. And many of these black celebrities and the incompetent pundit class, like the roly-polies, that's what they're on. Constantly screaming about, these Democrats, they need to do better messaging. They need to do better messaging. Yes, they've had these bootlicks and these shills like roly-poly and D.L. Hughley out here cheerleading for them. That's the problem. But as roly-poly sees it, he's brilliantly campaigning for a consultant's gig. He thinks he's going to be the next David Plouffe or the next David Axelrod, and he won't. The only thing Roland Martin's going to be is the next Roland Martin. They never tell these other groups, stop demanding things. You're going to lose us the election. You know, if it makes sense to tell black people and lecture black people about how we're threatening the Democrats' chances of winning the election, why is it that they never decide they're going to lecture everybody else like that? It would be just as valid, wouldn't it? Nah, they only begin and end their denunciations and their finger wagging with us. So when you have those Muslim voters saying, you know what, you're allowing the Israelis to wipe out the Palestinians, and because of that, we're not voting for you, you didn't see none of these fools jumping out a window and saying, oh, you're going to lose them the election. What the hell's wrong with y'all? Y'all just dumb as hell. They didn't do that to them. They didn't say anything. Every other constituency out there, when they make demands, those demands are respected and allowed. Everyone except us. We make a demand, we have to be shouted down, told it's not feasible, shamed for daring to actually want anything. And these shills are usually the ones leading the charge. They do it in the hopes that they can prove to their DNC paymasters that they're worthy of getting a job. That's the devil's bargain that these shills made with white power. The only way they can get anything is if they make sure black people get nothing at all. But keep in mind, since these shills use sock puppet accounts, we don't even know that these shills are black, because many of them aren't. Many of them are white or Asian or something other than black, and they try to convince us that they're one of us. These shills are Democrat operatives. Notice that they have accounts that have started recently and that they don't make it a point to do any sort of camera or audio work. In fact, most of them, they don't have any content whatsoever. Now, I myself have never gone on camera in over 15 years. You want to know why? One, I'm not interested in being Instagram famous. And secondly, when I observe people like Matt Drudge and others who don't go on camera but have a big impact in their ideological spheres, that speaks to me. You got a lot of fools out here. As far as they're concerned, they want to go ahead and try to get themselves some sort of following. And then as soon as they've got you following them, they immediately lead you to whatever Democrat, Republican, or corporate masters that they're hoping to get some money from. That's all they're doing, trying to build a base for themselves so that they can sell you to whatever interested white power party that they're hoping to get some crumbs from. Now, when it comes to the black media, we tell you all the time, don't get back of me. I'm not trying to get you to follow me. That's why I don't refer to you as my followers. And the reason why is I want you to follow the leader, and the leader is the code, not me. That's the reason why, even though I have never endorsed Donald Trump, you got these idiots who try to come in the comment section and say, you a Republican, you must want them to vote for the GOP. Even when I see people in the comment section who say, you know what, to hell with Kamala, I'm voting for Donald Trump. I'm like, why would you vote for him either? He's not offering you anything. That being the case, it's a zero-sum game for us, the way that it is now. There's nobody who's offering us anything, so why are we offering anyone our vote? That's what it means to discipline your vote. After over a decade and a half in the trenches, I'm a known quantity to you, on camera or not. You have over 15 years of my work, an unbroken track record. You can see my positions on the issues from ancient Egypt to modern America, and you'll notice that not one of my positions has changed in over 15 years. Not even one. Now, who are these shills that you see attacking us in comment sections? Or they're doing these little stupid little posts on X? People who you don't know, never heard of, but they're very quick to be calling themselves wagging the finger at black people and telling us how dumb we are because we're not obeying. These shills are political prostitutes, whoring themselves to the DNC. Actually, they'll drop trow for whoever will pay them. You look at people like Michael Steele, former chairman of the Republican Party. He's been on MSNBC full-time for years now. And Omarosa's steadily auditioning for a job, too. During the 2020 election, you had two career DNC shills, Simone Sanders and Karine Stank-Pierre, who were going out there shilling to beat the band. And they weren't doing it out of conviction. Simone Sanders worked for Bernie Sanders, and that's the guy who told us to our faces, reparations? That's not feasible. That's not feasible. And that's who Simone Sanders was originally working for and saying, you need to vote for him. Black people need to get behind it. He's got a real agenda for us. Yeah, while he's busy telling us that what we want isn't feasible. And even though Bernie Sanders, her old employer, the guy who brought her to national prominence by being the spokeswoman for his campaign, he was running for office in 2020 against Joe Biden. He was running for the presidency. And yet, Simone Sanders, his former spokeswoman, seamlessly made the jump from being the spokeswoman for the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016 to being a spokeswoman for the Biden campaign in 2020. All of a sudden, she made that swing real quick, didn't she? Yeah, because they were offering her a job. And after the election, both Simone Sanders and Karine Stank-Pierre wound up working for the Biden administration. What a coincidence. But you know the biggest Biden critic who was out there assailing him and was only too jolly in the behind to get behind him? Kamala Harris. Oh yeah, during the debates, she was raising or pretending to raise the specter of Joe Biden's bigotry. Yeah, she was all about that Biden. He was keeping opportunities from people right up until the moment that Joe Biden said, you want to be my VP running mate? After that, oh my God, Joe Biden, you're just as pure as the wind-driven snow. What a great man. Yeah, she dropped all of that, didn't she? As soon as she was offered a job. And you can tell that Simone Sanders' make-work job in the White House basement wasn't important to anyone because she was gone after less than a year. Less than 12 months after she got the job, she was already gone. But you know what? It didn't matter. Because in the world of the white media, it gave her what she really wanted, and that was a means to finally burnish her tattered resume just enough so she could get an MSNBC gig. See, saying that you worked at the White House, that's the kind of thing that even for the most unqualified, unintelligent boob in the room will still get you some sort of white media credibility. They can use that kind of thing. They actually like that kind of thing. We in the black media are trying to put an end to white supremacy, but these shills are trying to be part of it. I made it a point to educate black people about how election staffing actually works. That's the reason why I keep reminding you over and over again. These shills you see in front of the camera, watch what happens to them after the elections. See how these individuals shill and lie to beat the band, and they do all of this shameless bootlicking just so they can get their foot in someone's door. But they do it at our expense. They do it at the expense of our power, at the expense of our economic vitality, and mostly at the expense of our lives. When you see roly-poly dancing on stage with Hillary Clinton and sneaking her the questions to the debate ahead of time, you're seeing someone who isn't doing it because they love Hillary Clinton. They're doing it because they want a job in her administration if she wins. And Roly's the same garbage who cusses at black people and calls us all kinds of names for daring to demand anything for ourselves. See, if Roly-Poly's looking for a job, that's okay, and he'll get up there and buck dance for some butter biscuits. But you and I say, well, we're not going to be buck dancing, we're not going to be smiling at all, and we won't be voting either unless you give us something that all of a sudden, y'all just dumb as hell, y'all just stupid as hell. And the same thing goes for these sellout celebrities like Vivica Fox, Oprah Winfrey, D.L. Hughley, and the others. Vivica Fox was on the whole stupid black women aren't part of the black community kick. And then when Kamala Harris is running, she switches it to the whole black community needs to be behind her. In fact, all of these shea butter bootlicks who are on that black women have needs separate and apart from the black community, by which I guess they mean black men, they're now whining that black men aren't supporting Kamala Harris like they should be. They're supposed to be supporting her. Well, they're just jealous because she has a white husband. They're not saying, well, black men do have needs separate and apart from the black community or from black women, so she needs to speak to that. That's not what they're saying. In fact, they're not saying that Kamala Harris needs to speak to black women's needs either. Notice that? The same people who are saying black women have all these needs, all of a sudden, they drop that line. Well, gee, what the hell does Vivica Fox actually stand for then? What are her actual demands? Attention. That's what. And while most of these other bootlick celebrities aren't as obnoxious as Vivica Fox, they're certainly not more intellectually honest. D.L. Hughley or the Breakfast Schlubs, have you noticed how these guys never say what their issue is? And yes, I said issue singular. Sure, everyone has a number of issues that they care about, but if you have a brain, there's one issue in particular that's more important to you than the others. An issue that would be the one that determines how you vote. An issue which, if the party you've always voted for refuses to do it, you would sit the election out, because this issue is just that important to you. See, when somebody actually thinks, they prioritize. The rich are one-issue voters. And if the candidates refuse to address their issue, then they back someone who will, or they refuse to back anyone. But what they don't do is financially support someone who doesn't support their issue. Well, all the billions that these white oligarchs have is meaningless because it doesn't add up to 1 billion votes. That's what black people don't understand. We have more power than the billionaires do, but we keep letting shills and liars tell us to sit on our hands and never use that power. Well, never use it for ourselves. It's okay for us to use it for everybody else like a slave, but you're not supposed to actually use your power to benefit yourself. You're supposed to be thinking about everybody else, not just yourself. Meanwhile, everybody only thinks about themselves and never us. The entire reason that we have this satanic slaughterhouse that we're living in is precisely because we keep letting people trick us into using our power to benefit everybody else. These are Negroes who sold their souls, if they ever had one, to the white media decades ago. White power pays all their bills, and yet these same sellouts tell you and me that we shouldn't be demanding anything. They stand around all day with their hand out to white power, begging for crumbs from masses' table. But when we say that we will stand on our own 2 feet like grown men and women, and we're not settling for anything, we want the whole cake because we made it, we baked it, and they tell us we're in the wrong for asking for so much as a slice of it. No, to the sellouts, you're wrong, we're right. The shill has no principles, they have no core beliefs, they have no convictions. All they believe in is them first. And if they thought the Republicans would hire them, they'd jump ship in a heartbeat. D.L. Hughley and the rest of these bootlicks, they're not shilling for free. They're expecting to get something for all of their shameless butt kissing. Now, how the hell would you look if you decided you were going to vote for nothing, which is what they're telling you to do? Kamala Harris isn't the only one that we need to put the arm on. It's time to show these bootlicking celebrities that the white media may be able to give you a platform such as it is, but they cannot give you legitimacy. It doesn't matter if you're a washed-up comedian on the radio or if you're a butt-kissing functionary from California. Either way, black people are not going to make their decisions based on what these clowns say. We're going to make it based on what we know. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Hildman Gallo, Reginald Britt, Earth Angel, Aaron Ray, and Jesse. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.